Hello and welcome back. I'm Randy Newbert from VoodooFX. In today's video, we'll be doing the lighting kit assembly work on the new Round 2 TIE Fighter. So let's get started. Okay, so without further ado, here is the large scale TIE Fighter from Round 2. This is a 132 scale model that Round 2 came out with. And it is just an amazing and beautiful model kit. It's very large scale, and it is actually a really easy to assemble model as far as fit work goes, and just overall, it's just a really pleasurable kit to build. So anyway, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make this video so everyone could see how I'm going to attack the lighting on this model, and kind of how I'm going to produce the lighting system for it. What it's basically is I've broken this down into the two half parts, the interior and the bottom. And obviously I've already prefabbed and pre-built everything as much as I possibly can prior to doing the install of the electronics. So what's going to drive this is I have a small driver board. This board here is the it's basically a Metro Mini by Adafruit, and I've got it all pre-programmed. This does have effects on it. There is a startup sequence and fade up of the engines. The on lighting in the cab comes on, and then it has random flashing laser beam effects in the green for the front. So that is the board. And then everybody's asked us, like, how are you going to fit all this into there? Well, it's a tight fit, but I've already checked it, and I have it. It is going to fit inside the model. So what I've done here is I've prefabricated, and my best suggestion is to pretty much do it the same way. So I've made up my LEDs. I've put them on inline resistors. And you'll need to use one individual resistor for each LED used. These are obviously the engine. These are for the engine here. And then over here, I have these two sets. These are the green lasers that are going to be connected to the front. And these will, these will be on a random blinking cycle. So once you turn it on, they'll randomly fire. I thought it was better than having it just on. It kind of adds a nice little feature to it. And then on the last set, or the last pair, I have these two super wide angle reds. And these are going to go on they're going to look straight up to the floor and will in turn light the whole interior cab that nice reddish color. And again, these are super wide angle, prefabricated. I already made these up and they're ready to go. And again, one individual resistor for each LED used. And that's about basically how I have the wires prefab. Now, to show you the cab or the cockpit area. So this is basically the cockpit that's all prefabricated, pre-built. I built it as far as I can build it until I can actually get it inside the model. And as you can see, I've also taped out and had the whole bottom of the floor so I can underlight it. And then this will just, it takes care of all the lighting right through the floorway. And how you have to do this, you've got to tape this off, or in this case, I used liquid latex inside each individual grill or inside there, and then, you know, basically did all my paint work and then pulled each piece out. And that's what you get in the results. My suggestion also too is to scuff the bottom floor. And I use this so I could break it up and get more diffusion out of it. And this really helps the effect as far as spreading the light out evenly across the floor line. And then again, you want to make sure that you do a very good quality job on light blocking all this, because the light will want to escape. I'm sure there'll be little spots here and there that I'll have to chase back later, but overall, that if you pre-paint this and pre-light block it, then you have to do very little work in the end just to get rid of the little spots that are going to come in here and there. So that's basically the whole interior and cockpit area. Now, I found out what was the best way to do these for the engine lights. So what I ended up doing is I built, let me get this thing right side up here. So what I ended up doing is I fabricated everything I possibly could, as far as I put all the parts on the model, I primed it, I painted it, and light blocked it. And then I came back and I put the little individual clear parts inside the model. And these will be a little more extra work, because you're going to have to get in there and actually really light block these areas, because the light tends to penetrate out through it. So this will just be a good spot where you really want to do it. And then, as you can see on the inside, and I think this will show up pretty good in the camera, is on the inside edge, what I ended up doing is I blacked all this out, and I blacked out this little area because this is where the LEDs are going to sit. And it's so tight in the back wall there that when you put down the LEDs, you have to actually push the LED down a little bit on the side, and then you can route all the wiring down low and underneath here, and then into where the area where the circuit board's actually going to sit. Because I'm going to set this up so the actual circuit board itself sits inside the model, and I'll show that right now. So again, all pre-blocked out, primed and painted. And then again, I checked for light blocking in there over and over. Had to fill these little spots a few times, but that was it. And it looks really good. When I put the LEDs up inside there, it just goes away. It looks awesome. So that's that. And then here, so how this is going to work is basically I tried to find a good spot inside the model to actually, put this. And there's very little room underneath the floor, and there's not really any room on the top. So the only other spot that I could find, which it actually fits perfect, is I'm going to mount the circuit board right inside here. And then this, all the wires will be fed out to the locations. Again, I picked all my zones: 2 engines, 2 laser cannons, and 2 on lights is the grand total. But that is how you're going to mount the circuit board. The circuit board is going to sit in there in that little pocket on the wing. And then all the wiring, there's more than enough room to get the wiring to come in and out through here. You just got to keep it all nice and low, but perfect little spot to let it sit. If you really wanted to go really crazy, you could take out this last tab and have a little USB hookup. This is a USB-C style hookup, and you could actually you could pre-program or program the lighting feature to your liking. It comes pre-programmed and ready to roll, but if you did want to modify the program, that is one way you could access it once you actually get the circuit board in place. So that is the gist of these main areas. I'm going to set this down right here. Now, on the actual lasers themselves, what I ended up doing here is I had to take these lasers out. I had to tape them up really good. I used a little bit of liquid latex on both ends of the tips. And then when I had them on the ends of the tips, I just left that on almost all the way till I got to this point. Then I had to black out these areas really well and light block these so the light didn't escape through the lasers. It looks really bad if you don't really light block these well. And I'm sure, again, I'll have to probably do a little bit more when it's all said and done to light block them. On the flip side, all it is they just stick all the way through. They sit in there with 2 little ends. And then the LED is literally going to butt right up against the back of those clear parts. And then when they come on, it'll light up the tips. And that's how I've kind of figured the best way to light up those laser cannons and make it look right. There will be some additional light blocking that will need to be in place here for the area, because I'm sure it's going to want to leak a lot on that spot alone. And then again, for the bottom, if this is the, this is the front looking out. So here's the bottom little base cap. And when I go to put the cap on, and the interior is actually sitting inside the model itself, I will have the two red lights mounted just on the very bottom of here, right here and right here, almost midline of the model itself. And that will translate out to both sides, which I found out was pretty much puts out the most amount of light overall from coming through the floor. And then again, this will just sit in there. And then your rod from the stock model will come straight through here, come up the bottom, and then I'll run a power lead out this and into the base, and then I could have a switch and a little 9-volt hookup down there, so then that way I can turn them on and turn it off to see the feature. And again, you'll have to modify the stop on the top here. What I ended up doing here is I just cut it off low, almost flush with the top part here of the part. And then because the interior sits up a little bit, but it's really shallow in here. It's really low. And this is where you'll have to snake all the wiring and get it up into the area where the circuit board is. And I'm going to get into a little more detail about that as soon as I break out here and go to the next video. So what you'll need to do this for installation wise is you're going to end up needing a hot glue gun, some temporary tape. I like to temp my LEDs in place, and then I'll come back and use a very little small amount of hot glue to secure them. And I could always come back with clear silicone or other kinds of adhesion to get them to stick. But that I'll go over that when I get a little bit more fit inside. And again, you can kind of see where the cockpit actually fits inside here. And I'm just going to rest it in there kind of really loose, because it's got this little sweet spot that you got to get it into. And then once you get it on that little area, that's going to sit inside like that. This circuit board's going to be right there. All the wiring is going to sneak underneath here, and some of it can even just go right from the behind. I might just pull some of it through the back wall, but I'll just have to kind of fish it around, and wherever it's the easiest to get it in there is kind of how I'm going to do it. So let me switch the video out, and I want to start getting this thing assembled so you can kind of see how I'm going to do the assembly work. But overall, it's the best to prefabricate as much as you can. Prefabricate all your LEDs. Get your circuit board and wiring diagram. You thoroughly go through it and read it and know where you're going to hook up. And then go ahead and start getting it ready to do the assembly work. So let's move on to the assembly work. Okay, so the first area that we're going to tackle, and probably one of the harder spots to tackle, is going to end up being the engines, just because they're so tight and they're in a nice little spot that's in the back here. So what I've done here is I've already cut a couple little small pieces of tape, and I use these, just some long mask, and I cut them into little strips, and this will help me hold it in place until I actually get in here and do the gluing, or put the a little bit of hot glue in there just to hold them. So what I do is I've already test fitted these, and what I ended up doing is I've had to bend them just a little bit. You can probably see the little bit of the curvature of the bend there. And all I've done is I've done that bend so it can stay away from the interior part of the cab and the cockpit area. So I have them already, again, prefabricated in place. Now, you can go about this kind of two different ways, but how I'm going to do it in this scenario is I'm basically going to put it exactly where I want it, and then I'm going to take that little tiny piece of long mask that I cut to do a little temporary hold in position where I'm going to put the hot glue. So I just drop a little bit of that tape in there. I make sure that I'm kind of aligned well and really make sure that I've got good alignment on the actual part itself. I want to make the LED, it's kind of critical when you're looking for a nice, good, bright feature, is to have it very centered in the middle. These red diffuse throw a lot of broad light out, but they do a really good job at making it look really effective in the end. So this is kind of the best way to get set up for it. And so what I'll do is I'll usually do these one at a time. I'm already well bottomed out with that one. It's pretty much not going to go any farther. So I'll kind of move on to the next one. And on the secondary one, again, I'm going to slip it in the little spot. It sits at a little bit of a weird angle. Again, just because of how it's positioned in here. And then once I got it kind of close and in that sweet spot, again, I'm going to take a little piece of that long mask and I'm going to actually just put it right over the LED and where it is currently. And I'm going to just put it a little bit in there to temporarily hold it. And that's how you want to kind of temp it, is like that. You want to make sure that both the engines are temped in place, they're held. And then all I'm going to do is apply a little bit of hot glue here. You don't need much. So you just want to just put a little bit on each side just to hold it on the position. If you get too big of a blob of it on there, it could hook up when you go to actually set it. So I'll just put a very, very small amount on there, and that's how the engines will be mounted. Now, I've probably said this over and over in the past in the videos, how important it is to test. Well, since these are already prefabricated and they're ready to go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the LEDs anyway prior to doing any kind of installation. That way you know that you've got it in a good permanent position. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of turn it around and I'll just set it in place. I've already got it temped, so it shouldn't go anywhere. And then I'll go ahead and I'll take a little 9-volt battery and I'll do a little preliminary test. And I'll turn it on. And I don't know if you can see the light there. I'm going to turn it up towards it. But there it is. And so now you can see. And it's nice and brilliant. So I know I got my alignment good. And you can either put two of these together and then run the test. And in this case, I'm good where it goes. So you want to make sure that it's really in a spot where you want it. Because once you glue it down, it's going to be hard to get in there and move it around in any way. And again, I'll just go ahead and I'll do a quick test on the other one. And I'll just, again, just kind of hook it up. Then I'll look at the other side. Take a look, take a really good look at it. Make sure it looks like it's hitting on all the areas and it looks like it's nice and bright. And I think it reads pretty good right there. So that's it. Our engine area is now tested. I know they're operational, and I can move on to the next stage. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the hot glue out here in a sec. I just got my hot glue heating up right now. And all I'm going to do is just pull the wiring out of the way. I'm going to put a couple little, very small little dabs on there, and that should lock them down. And then I might even leave the tape in there temporarily until I get a little farther along. But I know once I'm kind of getting committed to the cab and I put all the whole cockpit assembly and everything in there, these will be non-accessible. So that's why I have to make sure that this is a really on there right and at a critical stage right now. So, and again, this wire is going to travel, I'm thinking underneath all this and just come underneath and then come over, and the circuit board will be over on this side. Yeah, we'll get a little farther onto that once I get a little bit farther here. So let me go ahead. Let me see if my gun is hot and I can get a little bit of glue out of it. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to take the glue gun and I will go and add a little glue on there. And it looks like it's good enough to get some glue out of. And again, I'm just going to use a little bit inside here just to hold it in place. And because you just don't want these to back out once it's actually in there. That would be kind of disastrous. So again, I'm just going to use a little tiny bit. I'm going to kind of just put it on there. And also too is these LEDs might need to be blacked out because I might get a little bit of light block running through them because there's just they show through this plastic. Even though the plastic's nice and thick and robust and everything, it's just it's one of those things where you really gotta light block it and make sure that it's all gone. A bad light block job will really look poor when it comes to the lighting end of it on a finished piece. So again, you want to make sure that you really take the time to get it in there. The next stage I'm going to do is I'm going to move right forward, and as soon as I know that these are glued into place and permanent, I'm going to go ahead and get the cockpit, and I will add a couple of little tabs of glue on the inner tabs here where it rests, and then I'll go ahead and I'll mount that in place, and then that'll take care of all the engine lights. And again, I will build this model in a half section, and then when it's all done, I'll finally put the top half on after it's all wired. So let me move on to the next stage, and we'll get on with getting the cockpit in place. Okay, just on one side note, I went to go fit this into the actual model housing inside, and I noticed that I was kind of getting hung up a little bit. So what you'll need to do is smooth down this edge, this one corner, a little bit on each side with just a sanding stick, and this will give you enough clearance that they'll slide into the cockpit area smoothly. Because I was trying to force it in there a little bit, I'm like, wow, this is tight. Well, these little tabs sit out a little far. So just take your sanding stick, knock down these edges, and then that way it won't rub on the inside of the LED. So let me move on to now fitting it in place. Okay, so I've finally got the cockpit mounted. I used a little bit of CA on the inside edge. I mounted them out to these two tabs on each side. And again, I'm not putting any glue on this side, obviously, because I haven't closed it up. This will be built, everything will be built inside here, and then I'll finally transfer it over when I put the half on, once the lighting's all on and tested. So I mocked it up, I ran the wire through. Again, I had to kind of come underneath, and I'll manage the wire a little bit better once it's all said and done. But there we go. And I got my two wires coming over here. This is actually a really good time to do a quick test. So I've wired these two together, and I'm going to apply a little power, and I want to test them before I get any farther and make sure that they're operating. And there you go. So they are operating. They look nice and bright. I haven't pinched anything off. This is what you want to see for sure. This is the look that you're after. Again, hardly any light leak. They look mounted nice, and I can move on to the next stage. So I think from here on out, now that the cockpit's, where it's going to sit and it's glued in hard in place here, now I can start working my way out of here. What I'm going to focus on next now is doing the lower area for the bottom, and then I'll do the final setup on the actual laser cannons. So let's move on to the next step. Okay, so I'm moving on now to the lower area of the floor light, or the red floor lights that are going to come through the floor. In this case, I wanted to show something a little bit that I probably haven't shown before in the past about how to actually bend an LED and get the LED to actually look up at a 90-degree angle. I've already fabbed this one, and how I do it, you can't do it by hand because it just bends them and crimps them and they get all weird. They'll snap off, they'll do all sorts of funky stuff. So anyway, what I do here is I use a pair of needle nose tweezers, and these should be in everybody's model building kit and for electronics. And what I do is I take the LED, I've kind of immobilized it a little bit and hold it in my hand so then I don't break it. I slide the actual, I slide it up onto there a little bit. You don't want it all the way in because you don't have enough control. So you want to build it so you get a little bit of, purchase on the LED. And then you want to bend it at the joint where the resistor and the wire lead is. You don't want to bend it from the LED itself. So what I do in here, I go in there and I'll pinch it off nice and tight, and I'll hold it, and then I easily, very slowly bend it up into that 90-degree angle, and then I'll stop. And you're only going to get one kind of shot at this. Once you start trying to bend them backwards, they just, sometimes you really risk the chance of breaking them and bending the whisker inside the actual LED. This is also probably a good stage to probably try it after you've done the hookup to make sure that you haven't damaged the LED in any way. So again, I'll take my little 9-volt battery just as a tester, and I'll go ahead and I'll find my orientation here, positive and negative, give it a turn it on. There you go. So this will be producing the light that's going to be necessary for the floor. And this light is going to sit, let's see if I can hold it on at the same time. So this little light, this is the front tab where this bottom mount goes for where you're going to send it through to the base. And then your tube, your stainless steel tube, is going to sit in there. So what I'm going to do on this one is, I know this is the back side, I know this is the front, and you can't mount this until the very end because it keys in with this, so you want to try to get it all aligned really close. And then all I'm going to do is take a little hot glue again, and I'll use my taping technique, and I'm just going to mount it right there at the midpoint. And I've drawn a little dot on there, and on both sides, and that gives me a place to go for. This is always a good way to hold location, and then I'm going to put it somewhere right in that vicinity as far as the look goes, and then this light will transfer up through the floor, and with any good luck here, it should look pretty darn good. So I'm going to go ahead and mount those in place at this time, and then I'll just, again, I'll leave this on till the very end. This will be like the last thing that I hook up, and but I can go ahead and mount it in place, get a little hot glue, get them evenly spread out. And as long as the LEDs are looking up into that area, I think overall they should be just fine. So let me go ahead and do that. And I don't think I'll bore you with the hot glue and the taping job again. But again, you want to mount them down here. They need to sit as flush as they can. The lower the better. If you can kind of see here, the lower you can be down in this little gap, the more flat light you'll get coming up the top. If these are too bright, which, you know, in this case, I don't think it's going to be a problem because it's pretty red in there, but you want to keep this thing as low as possible so it will throw the widest amount of light out into the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and mount these, and then I'm going to put this part aside. And again, this will be something that'll be wired and mounted in the very end. So I'll have to come back on the final assembly and actually show you that stage. So let me move on, but that's how you bend an LED. Again, test them each time. whenever you do a bend job like that. And then when you go to put them in, be real cautious just to, mount them gently. You don't need to go anything heavy or rough. And again, you can see these are super wide angle, so you're going to get a really wide angle profile as far as the lighting goes up in there. It should really look good as far as the feature goes. So let me move on to the next stage. I'm going to get prepared here now to go forward with getting ready for the lasers. That is kind of the next stage, but I will not be able to do all the assembly work yet until I'm really ready to really close it up and get it into place. Again, I would like you to study the wiring diagram very carefully. The wiring diagram will tell you exactly what zones are indicated to each channel that's going to be for an output in the controller board. And this is a really critical stage that you want to make sure that you get them all lined up right. Currently what I do is I always make myself a little tiny notation that tells me after I've got the programming all dialed in, I'll write down on there, I'll say, okay, port number 2 and 3 does this, port number 3, 4, 5, and 6 do this, and 7 and 8 do this. And that's keeps me straight as far as what areas have effects in them and how they're going to be transitioned into the actual location and zone. So anyway, so let me move on to the next stage, and let's see if we can get a little bit closer to getting more of a time. Okay, so we've moved on now to the final stages, which is going to be the wiring and mounting of the board. I basically have finally assembled most of the hardware inside and got most of the lighting locations already dialed in. I've added this black and white twisted pair wire, and I've kind of routed it through here on the model. This will go down the actual stainless steel stand tube, and this will go into the base, and then this is how you will hook up your main power, is actually right on, will be on this lead. And then I'll mount inside the actual base box the battery assembly and a little on and off switch so I can arm the system and then have the lighting come on. I've already tested all the zones. Everything's operational. This is, again, I can't force it enough that it's very apparent that you want to test as you're going, and test all the way up until you're ready to kind of close the halves off and actually assemble the two halves together as the main body. This is kind of a crucial stage, and you got to be very careful not to pinch the wires, because as you can see here, there's a lot of wiring going on here. Even though it's only 6 lights, this is a cramped and tight spot to get all the wiring into. So you want to be very, very careful not to pinch off the wires. So again, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take this. I'm going to start. I've got all my wire leads out here, and I know what's what. And then I'm going to go bring this up onto the bench to my soldering station. And I'm going to go ahead, and again, you can see I've added this black and white twisted pair wire for the main power. And then I've added a ground wire off here, and this is what will ground all the LEDs to the so you have grounds. The lighter wires in here for the LEDs will all be indicated in the wiring diagram, but these wires will go to the ports that are assigned out here, 1 through 13. And again, they're specific to where they're going to go. And so what I got to do is I got to draw myself a little map, and I'm going to, I'll have the wiring diagram here so I'll know that what port does what. And mainly there's mainly like 4 or 6 ports that are on only. This will be all for the red lights that are on for the deck and for the interior. And then there's 2 lights that will control the engine feature. There's no flutter, but when it starts up, it'll hold for a little bit, and then it'll come up to a fade. And it's just a nice little feature that I added in there. And then the final couple locations will be dedicated to the lasers. And I think that those ports are designated by either port, I got them here, 8 and 9 are going to be the laser ports, and those will be teamed onto, you know, there'll be one's a left, one's a right, or right and a left. It doesn't matter, but those two ports are allocated for the lasers themselves. And then again, the engines on a separate port, and all the on lighting's on a separate port as well. Again, this has been a great little project. I should have a little bit tighter of a finish up video. I didn't really realize how long this video was going to last. Doing a full wiring assembly install. Now that I kind of have a good idea at how long these ones take, these videos will be broken up in kind of a more of a series instead of trying to jam them all into one session or one long video. So anyway, so again, if you've got any questions, please email me. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so at this time. We can really use the support, and give us a good thumbs up, and write any comments you'd like to in there. And again, we'd really want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and we will be coming out with more videos on how we do electronic assembly work. So anyway, till the next video, we'll see you then, and again, thanks for watching.